Robert Morris, Gateway founder, is indicted on SA charges.
Some Diddy stuff.
The founder of one of North Texas's most prominent megachurches is facing child sex charges. Hello, everybody. I'm Heather Hayes.
And I'm Steve Eager. It's 9 o'clock. An Oklahoma grand jury indicted Gateway Church founder Robert Morris on 5 felony counts. The allegations emerged in June of last year when the Christian Post published a woman's story alleging she was abused by Morris starting at the age of 12. Jeez. The church first said it was aware of Morris's past, quote, moral failure, then later said it did not know her age, the victim's age, or the extent of the abuse. 3 days later, Morris resigned from Gateway. In November, Gateway announced...
This all happened last summer, right? It's a big deal. A lot of people at that church heard. I have a clip of the lady who has been openly talking about all of this.
Multiple elders who knew the victim's age at the time of the abuse, and now Morris is facing those criminal...
The 5-page multi-county grand jury indictment from Oklahoma contains disturbing details, outlining 5 separate counts of lewd or indecent acts to a child, starting on or about Christmas Day, 1982.
This is a sickness of the highest order.
Yeah, this is next level depraved.
Christmas Day,
too.
Good Lord.
Poor child. Yuck.
Robert Preston Morris, quote, did intentionally touch or feel with his hand the body or private parts of CC, who was 12 years old at the time. While court documents do not name the victim, the initials, timeline, and details match the allegations made by Cindy Clemishire. And while Fox 4 does not usually identify victims of alleged sexual abuse, Clemishire went public with her story last June, detailing moments of her childhood in Oklahoma, where she says Robert Morris molested her repeatedly.
He was already in ministry at the time. That's the most terrible part. Like, this wasn't like some stuff he did before he was a Christian. Like, he was in ministry preaching. That's why he was at her house with her folks, staying there.
That's dark.
Yeah, with his wife.
Ooh, goodness.
I think his wife was there too.
Morris was a traveling preacher and would stay at Clemishire's home. Aside from 2 alleged crimes in 1982, the indictment outlines similar instances in January of 1983 and 1985. According to court paperwork, it escalated when his victim was 13 or 14, highlighting incidents between January of 1983 and 1985, when Morris, quote, removed her clothing and rubbed his clothed body against hers while inside a parked car. On Wednesday, an attorney representing Cindy Clemishire released this statement to Fox 4. After almost 43 years, the law has finally caught up with Robert Morris for the horrific crimes he committed against me as a child. Now it is time for the legal system to hold him accountable. My family and I are deeply grateful to the authorities who have worked tirelessly to make this day possible and remain hopeful that justice will ultimately prevail.
Well, it's been a spectacular downfall for one of America's most well-known pastors. Robert Morris, the founder of the Gateway Church, is now facing trial.
Hold on. That's a weird sentence. Spectacular downfall?
What does that mean? A little bit more happy?
Tragic?
Goodness gracious.
Massive hurt and abuse? Like, spectacular downfall.
She's like, finally, someone didn't like his preaching.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Sex abuse-related charges in Oklahoma. The grand jury indictment was announced Wednesday, and our Robbie Owens has been getting answers about what happens next. Robbie.
Karen, bond for the former Gateway pastor has been set at $50,000. Oklahoma officials tell me
he's going to be out and about.
He's going to be out and about.
Yeah, $50,000. I think you put $5,000 down and you're good.
Oh, you only need like a 10%?
I think, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Expect him to turn himself in early next week. Now, I asked twice, but was never given a clear answer on whether that has to happen in Oklahoma. Typically, that's the case. But as you know, there has been nothing typical about this situation. Normally, we would not identify sexual assault victims, but Cindy Clemishire has indeed confirmed that she is that unnamed victim in the indictment, and she says she no longer wants her name or her story hidden. I spoke with her earlier today as she talked about that moment in the courtroom.
I wonder what took so long for these charges to finally happen, because this all came out last summer. She was on record back then. I'm pretty sure she was open about who she was back then.
Oh yeah.
So I don't understand what took so long for these things to come out.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to be a statute of limitations on this apparently in Oklahoma, because there are other states there is a statute of limitation, but I think maybe because it's a kiddie stuff, like maybe there isn't any statute of limitations on it, which I personally, I think that's reasonable. The way it should be.
When the indictment was read.
Well, it was very surreal after all these years and really not believing it would ever happen. And a relief and just very grateful. My family's been very grateful for the diligence of all the law enforcement and everyone involved. that's made this happen.
What is your message to the community that has supported you?
Thank you. Thank you for all of the messages through text and Facebook or social media, and just the strength that it's given myself and my family to continue.
Someone in the chat said, like, kids don't do stuff when they're young.
Oh,
this is a 21-year-old and a 12-year-old, fam. That's not a kid.
That's a grown.
It's a 21-year-old itinerant preacher. That's
This is a sickness
I trust
of the highest order.
I trust that they didn't have all the facts.
Yeah, I would think not.
Eternal Slayer 12.
I would hope not. That was
guessing
dark.
Didn't know
That was dark, my guy.
Helping so many other victims, it really truly means so much to me.
8-9 months ago, when you first decided to go public with your story, I know you had shared with close friends and therapists, but when you told the world your story, looking back, were you prepared for what was going to happen next?
I don't think anybody could ever be prepared. Even knowing the platform that he had built to speak from, I still don't think anyone could ever truly be prepared. And just still so grateful for the response. I know there's negativity out there, but for the most part, it's just been nothing but support.
I mean, props to her for coming out, for being brave. It's difficult.
So he might be in prison.
I mean, he's not walking away from this without some degree of consequences, for sure.
Statute of Limitations victim's 45th birthday or 12 years after the discovery if the victim is over 18 on essay against a kid. So my thought is, how do they do DNA testing with all this since it's been that long ago?
Did they say there was DNA testing?
No, I don't think they do DNA. I think Kevin, I think you're thinking of like a grape kit type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's like that. It's kind of a your word against mine, except the fact that he admitted to pretty much everything.
He did admit to pretty much everything.
And he met with people and they have files saying, and he has emails going back to that time of being like, we squashed the beef and we move on with forgiveness. So I think there's a lot of documentation.
Yeah.
That it definitely happened.
I got you. Okay, so because there's documentation behind the scenes and because he probably did confess to someone about this, it was documented and they probably pulled on that thread and then it all...
But it is kind of sketchy. I mean, it is his word against hers because if we just saw the Jay-Z situation and what they had to do was pretty much get her to like finesse her into a way to into admitting that it was false. Right. So I think that would have just played out as is and been like,
I don't think he confessed in the presence of law enforcement. I think he confessed within the context of local church and it was restored.
He confessed to her parents, to his wife.
Well, kind of. I don't know if he fully confessed. He made it sound like she kind of seduced him, I think, in some of the stuff that he said. It was really weird.
But there was definitely a record of
20 to life. Yeah. Whew, man, that is dark stuff. And the fact that he went on to build one of the biggest churches, and be massively influential and impactful.
Yep.
Like, what do you do with that? DNA surviving even under non-ideal if they did do the testing. I don't know the story. Yeah, maybe that's good. I mean, she would have had to hold on to something from back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which
that doesn't sound
right. That doesn't
sound like it's plausible.
Yeah. So from one standpoint, like this sort of stuff blemishes the gospel in a way. This hurts how people perceive the church in a way. However, I think that maybe there's some sort of cleansing happening. Maybe there's some sort of purging happening of sorts, right? Over the past 5 years, you're seeing this sort of stuff several times. And I don't think this is as prevalent, but the issue is that even if it's not as prevalent, there can be a system and a culture where this stuff is passed over and ignored. And that's the part that's probably concerning to most people, is that he was restored within a couple years back to preaching.
Yeah, it's pretty horrifying.
You know?
I think the worst part, too, about that is that, like, if she wasn't a child, he shouldn't have been restored.
If she was not a child?
Yeah, if she was a grown adult and he cheated on his wife while he was in ministry, there's no rest. You should not be, you're disqualified from ministry.
Yes, I think...
Go be a plumber.
Yeah, I think...
It's over for you.
People in some circles definitely hold that position, but not in all circles. So there are pastors that have committed adultery and then got restored, but definitely not within a year or two. 5 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years. Yeah. You know, but yeah, you
talk about imposter syndrome.
You got to go build a whole nother life before you ever go back into ministry like that, for sure.
Yeah, what I mean is that like when a pastor is in ministry
and does it,
not like a guy that had a weak faith.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm tracking with you.
Then they restore. Then 20 years later, it's part of his testimony, and then he's in ministry. I'm talking about like you're actively in ministry. You fumbled.
There seems to be a line that if you do certain things, you disqualify yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And I would say adultery is probably that line, but people still restore people, quote unquote, within a couple of years and position them back into, doing this sort of stuff. And that's not healthy. That's what I'm saying. From a certain cultural standpoint, that stuff's not healthy. Covering this sort of stuff is not healthy.
Totally.
And could it have been prevented had someone said, hey, you got to sit down. Like this, this ain't in the cards for you. You got to go get a job. You got to take a break. You got to go do something else for a while.
The culture back then must have been pretty tight-lipped, huh?
Yeah, for sure. And this is like, I mean, in the 80s, like the shame she probably felt, the shame the family probably felt. That's why this stuff was probably covered
TikTok of people being like,
yeah, there was a totally different culture around this for sure. I'm glad that like this stuff's coming out and people aren't afraid to talk about this and victims are being heard. Right. Like, I think that's massively healthy to talk about this stuff and get voices heard. Massive update for you. I'm sure by this point, you've heard about the Blessed God Summit happening March 27th, 28th, 29th here in beautiful Carlsbad, California. But we've heard your requests. We've conceded to your demand. There are virtual tickets that are now available for the Blessed God Summit, so you can access it from anywhere in the world, as well as access to the replays. And for those of you guys that are looking for something extra, we're also offering a virtual ticket and an exclusive Bless God Summit merch bundle. There's some amazing art and some exclusive pieces done by our friend Josh Nadeau from Sword and Pencil that you have to check out. So join us online for the virtual event and experience some sessions from my favorite podcasters, pastors, and performers. We have a stacked lineup. I'm talking about Preston Perry, Dr. Sean McDowell, Inspiring Philosophy. What do you mean? Lila Rose, Alan Parr, and his wife Jen Parr. We even have Nate Sala from Wise Disciple, Gavin Ortland, David Wood, Avery from God Logic Apologetics. And on the pastoral side, we have my friend Daniel Golding, Pastor Ed Newton from CBC in San Antonio, and my personal pastor from Rhythm Church, Pastor Jeff Moores and his wife Erin Moores. You won't want to miss out from amazing performances from America's Got Talent winner Dustin Savella, Billboard charting hip-hop artist John Keith, and Miles Minnick. And we're still finalizing a few more speakers. So head over to blessgod.shop, get your virtual ticket now, and you can get yourself a bundle with some of the exclusive merch as well. I'll see you over there, all right? Peace.